Top Med Talk.
Monty Mythen here. As we prepare to move into the next phase of the COVID crisis, we're going to be widening our focus here on Top Med Talk. We will continue to deliver COVID-specific programs, but we all have a huge additional responsibility as we try to reboot normal services. So although this piece is not directly related to COVID-19, we believe it's information that is crucial to the bigger task of rebuilding the healthcare system as we learn to adapt and live with this new virus. Thank you to our sponsors and to you, our listeners, for helping us to share this important information.
Hello, I'm Desiree Chappell, and this is Top Med Talk. We're here in Orlando, Florida for Anesthesiology 2019, the annual meeting of the American Society of Anesthesiologists. With over 14,000 delegates, this is the largest gathering of anesthesiologists and anesthesia providers in the world. Now, I'm joined by my co-host, editor-in-chief of Top Med Talk, Monty Mythen. Hello, Monty.
Hey, Desiree.
Jumping right in, we are going to have a conversation about an article. So we're going to do a deep dive, kind of a journal club here at the Top Med Talk booth. We have Tim Short. You are from New Zealand.
Yes.
Auckland.
Yes.
You made it all the way over here to Orlando for the meeting for ASA.
It's been fantastic.
Good.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Great. And we have Kate Leslie, who is from that part of the world, Melbourne, Australia. Kate, how are you?
Oh, really well. Thanks for having us on Top Med Talk.
Yeah, of course. Well, when we were talking about this, I guess, Tim, why don't you introduce the article that we are going to be discussing and some of the things we're going to be talking about today?
Well, we've just completed a very large study looking at the role of anaesthetic depth and whether it's important in determining outcome after anaesthesia.
Is it out yet officially?
Yes, it was published yesterday in The Lancet simultaneously with our presentation of it at the Breaking Trials session here in the ASA.
Fantastic. So we can deep dive into this. It's all public knowledge now,
yes,
right? All of it's out. Great.
And Tim, when you say big trials used to be over 100 patients, but you're up into the thousands for this, aren't you?
Yes. I mean, this is a study of over 6,500 patients. It's been conducted over many years, and we've really looked at what we can do to improve outcomes in the sick older patient. There's been a lot of concern in the literature that we may be over-anaesthetising elderly patients and that we, could refine our drug doses and techniques, and that anaesthesia has a role in improving the outcome for patients that undergo major surgery, particularly when they're, older and more vulnerable.
Now, when they do these big trials, Tim, sometimes the criticisms are that there aren't enough centres or there aren't enough countries. But I think you've checked that off as well, haven't you? This was a collaborative trial between many countries and many centres.
Yes, we have a very successful clinical trials network that's been run under the auspices of ANZCA, and over the years we've developed quite a number of staunch collaborators, and this study was done in 8 countries, including the United Kingdom, of course, the United States of America, New Zealand, Australia, and Hong Kong and China.
So we can say it's generally, we believe these results are applicable to a very broad population.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the theory behind it, everyone would be concerned that if you got too much anaesthetic, it might have a long-term effect. And that's the depth thing, is the idea that we have these gases or drugs we give to keep people, what they call asleep, anaesthetised during surgery, to render them, insensible. And there's been concern based on observations recently that if they were deeper, that they might have a worse outcome, including die more often. That was the core bit.
Yes. There's been 7 or 8 large studies of observational data showing quite a strong association between overly deep anaesthesia and subsequent mortality rates being higher. The question was whether we could improve patients' outcomes by intervening and, quite aggressively targeting a lighter level of anaesthesia, and whether such an approach would be safe.
And to give the lighter or deeper anaesthesia, we now have monitors that tell us about depth of anaesthesia, sensors we can put on. And as I understand the trial, you sort of set that at 2 different levels to get a separation of dose?
Yes. I mean, we basically chose 2 levels. One was at the deeper level where most patients traditionally have probably sat. But now with the depth monitors, we can run people safely at a lighter level of anaesthesia with we hope no increased risk of awareness as a result of using less anaesthetic gases.
And if I may, the result.
The result.
Drum roll, please.
We looked at a very large number of parameters, but the initial result was essentially the survival of the patient for 1 year after their major surgery. And we found that there was no difference in outcome between a light level of anaesthesia and a deep level of anaesthesia. But I must predicate that this was not very deep anaesthesia.
Yes.
It was strictly within the bounds of normal clinical practice. But I think we defined that our current practice of anaesthesia is essentially safe.
So I think in my what I've read of it so far, it's sort of deeper anaesthesia versus lighter anaesthesia.
Well, can you give us a little bit of more specifics about that? Kate, can you give us a little bit more specifics about what the anesthesia levels really are?
Sure. So we based the two group depths on a lot of research that had been done previously and also experience in Tim's hospital with their large database. And we worked out that anesthesiologists or anaesthetists tend to confine their anaesthetic depth to a range of between a BIS value of 35 and a BIS value of around 50. A reduction, one-third reduction in the amount of anaesthetic vapour or sevoflurane or desflurane that's administered to patients in the lighter group. So we found that we could get two groups that were acceptable to anaesthetists and that were within the recommended guidelines of the company that produces the monitor, and also that were consistent with previous research projects. And so it's a real-world comparison. It's not a comparison, as Tim has already said, between two things that are not normal in clinical practice.
So it is the main take from it that over quite a range of anaesthetic depth, they're all safe. Is that overstating it, or?
This was an intention to treat trial.
Yes.
The two groups, we intended to have one group with a BIS of 35 and the other with a BIS of 50, and we took those patients and compared them, and there were no differences in mortality between the two groups.
So equally safe then. We're not saying they're both safe from that perspective, but it sounds as though
safe,
the lighter one would be more, it would save more money, wouldn't it? And the lighter one, using less vapour to achieve a similar result. That's good. That's good for the planet, isn't it?
Well, potentially.
Yeah.
We're going to do an economic sub-study to define that more precisely. There are other possible advantages to light anaesthesia. Patients wake up more quickly. And also there's literature that shows that there might be a lower rate of delirium. So we've done a delirium sub-study in 600 of the patients, and we're analysing those data now to see whether our data are consistent with those previous studies. So that'll come out soon, and we can talk to you again on Top Med Talk about that.
We'd look forward to it.
Yeah,
and
that.
I think touched a little bit on this in our chat beforehand. People are going to push you to say, what about the extremely deep anaesthetics that probably occurred? You know, the burst suppression group, as they call it, I'm guessing that's going to be a follow-up sub-study as well.
Yes. We'll be doing a very detailed analysis of the BIS traces to look for evidence of whether burst suppression is bad for you, and this will be very high resolution data, and I hope that'll answer that question for anaesthetists as well.
We're also going to see whether the people who had burst suppression or who were deeply anaesthetised but needed very little anaesthesia to become deeply anaesthetised. Our colleague Doug Campbell, who was a crucial part of the study, he's going to lead that analysis as well, because there's probably a group of very frail people out there who need very little anaesthesia, and they might be actually the ones who are having the worst outcomes.
Now, there's a tendency for some people to talk about these very large trials that show no difference in the primary outcome variable as being negative, which is a very negative way of looking at them. I mean, I think it's a hugely positive trial that we have that level of understanding about daily practice. And shame on us, perhaps we should have known it a long time ago. But congratulations, this is really important work.
Well, we think it's great news.
Yeah, it's
because
great.
It means that we have not been going around putting patients in danger for the last 160 years by making them too deeply anaesthetised. Well, at least that's our conclusion. Right, Tim?
I agree totally. And as a clinical trials network, I think we're very concerned not with whether a study's positive and you're a hero or negative, but that we definitively answer questions of importance in everyday practice.
And we've spent last couple of days, you referred to numerous times to the relief trial, which we would put in that category. It's a definitive answer to a question.
And 1 year later, and everyone's digested it, and again, I think we can demonstrate that what we're doing is safe.
What else is in the pipeline?
We're looking at the study of dexamethasone that will be released next year. There's approximately 1 million doses of dexamethasone given in Australasia every year with anaesthesia. It's not actually registered for that purpose as a drug, and we do not know the side effect profile of a single dose. And I think that will be a very interesting result. We're also looking at the role of ketamine infusion and the suppression of chronic pain as a primary outcome to see if we can reduce that incidence. And again, that becomes part of regimes that use less opioids, which has become very topical, and we're attempting to get funding for a study of intravenous lignocaine currently.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, all those are very, that's all practical stuff that we can use tomorrow, to change practice. Hopefully some of those outcomes.
And I guess with the IV lignocaine, I think we spoke a little bit, lidocaine, that stuff. Yeah. There's the cancer story in there as well, is that right? Yeah.
So we're also doing a study called Vapor-C, comparing propofol and sevoflurane or volatile-based anaesthesia for patients with cancer. And there's a factorial in there with lidocaine to see whether that's changing cancer outcomes. And then we've got a proposal to do a study with a cool acronym we call it LOLLIPOP. This acronym is absolutely key.
Yeah, you got to name it.
And that one's looking at lidocaine and the progression to chronic pain.
So with not everyone will be familiar with factorial designs. You have a straightforward randomisation to 2 anaesthetics, and then there's a secondary, is that right, randomisation, and then you can mix the groups up.
So one of the most well-known ones is POISE-2, where patients were randomised to aspirin or placebo, and then they were randomised to clonidine or placebo. And when you don't think there'll be a big interaction between those two drugs in terms of their effect on the outcome, then it's safe to do a factorial. And you get 2 trials for the price of one, which is, in this day where it's so hard to get funding, is a very efficient way to do research.
And that's a lot of work already. Anything else?
I was just going to say, I'm tired just listening to you guys.
Well, we're doing, we like collaborating internationally.
Yeah,
so
you guys are great at that.
In Balanced, Tim set up a collaboration with Dan Sessler in America. And we are also participating in POISE-3, which is another factorial design, and that's with PJ Devereaux and the team at McMaster University in Canada.
And that's got 2 questions again, has it?
Yes.
POISE-3?
So that's tranexamic acid versus placebo, and a hypertension avoidance strategy and a hypotension avoidance strategy in patients having major non-cardiac surgery.
So this factorial design again, 2 for the price of 1.
Yes.
Finger bang. I know. That's crazy. You guys are hard at work. You know what? We jumped so quickly into talking about the study. Can you give us a little bit about your background? So, Tim, where are you from? What do you do? And tell us about this clinical trial network.
Well, I'm just a clinical anaesthetist at Auckland City Hospital.
I don't think you're just a...
I work full-time in the OR.
Yeah?
And I get half a day for research.
Oh, my gosh.
I spend that time really working on clinical trials, clinical outcome trials, which are of immediate relevance to my daily practice. My predominant practice is, in fact, neuroanaesthesia, but also adult trauma. and I'm an honorary professor at the Auckland University as a result of all the research that we've published over the years. The Clinical Trials Network is an initiative from the Australian New Zealand College of Anaesthetists to coordinate centres to do clinical outcomes research. It's been largely based on the very successful intensive care and other networks from other specialties, and it's been in existence approximately 10 years, and it's brought together interested clinicians from all over Australasia, and we've now got a very successful network of probably about 40 hospitals that partake in this research. And I think for me it's been incredibly satisfying both to lead one of these projects, but also to get to know my colleagues from other universities a lot better and discover we have a lot of common interest, and also to see the engagement from people in particularly, less academic centres. And I feel that our job's done when we improve the quality of the conversation in the tea room, and I think we've done that enormously. That, people ask good questions now when they come to meetings, and it's been great to see the way people have engaged in trying to find out more about what they do every day.
And Kate, did you meet Tim through the ANSCA relationships, or give us a little bit about your background and how all this came to be?
So I'm a full-time anaesthetist in Melbourne at the Royal Melbourne Hospital, and I'm an honorary professor at the University of Melbourne and Monash University. My first clinical trial was the Be Aware trial, which I did with Paul Miles and others, and that was the second trial in the series. The first one was the master trial about epidurals, and so I've been part of all of the big trials since then. This has been a great collaboration because I've known Tim forever, and me and Tim and Doug kind of cooked this up 10 years ago, and Tim's been, a staunch leader, resilient, stubborn, really strong leadership. And it's the first trial that we've run from New Zealand.
Oh, okay.
Which is absolutely fantastic. So the Trials Network relies on the input from all of these anaesthetists and patients. And I think the value proposition for them, for the patients, is that it gives, their injury or their illness some kind of meaning to contribute to medical research, and also anaesthetists, can be a bit dull from time to time, and so it spices up your life to participate in a research project. And this was actually different to normal. Like, this wasn't just inject a drug or take a pill. This required the anaesthetist to pay attention to the best value for the whole case, and they were hours long.
Wow!
And it wasn't easy, and we're very, very grateful to them for doing it,
taking the time to do it.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
It's a little reach to watch that for that long a time.
So as part of in Top Med Talk, we usually try and drag a little extra out of people about their personal lives, a little bit of secret story. So I'm going to take one from each of you. Now, Kate, I think you're the subject of a portrait. Is that correct? A portrait that is displayed in a prominent place.
I'm the subject of two portraits.
Oh, sorry.
So I was the president of the Australian and New Zealand College of Anaesthetists, and there's a very lovely portrait that's hanging in the College of Anaesthetists, which is a traditional portrait with me in a suit with the medal, and that one.
The other one I was talking about.
Yeah, that one I sat was painted from life over a week. Amazing. But the other one.
Can I ask one question about that? How many other women are in that?
I was the second president who was a woman, but I was the second of a series of 4 presidents, all in a row, who've been women.
Excellent.
So fantastic. When you said a proper portrait with suit, I'm like, well, you have to be surrounded by men on that one.
But the other one was in the National Portrait Prize in Australia, which is called the Archibald Prize. And the artist had me sitting next to a fish pond with dangling my fingers in the pond with the fish, and beside me was an opium poppy, and I had to wear a red skirt. And the idea was
it's a beautiful portrait.
That the water is the unconscious and the fish are dreams, and I'm kind of conjuring it all up. But I had to wear a red shirt because that would attract a skirt because that would attract the attention of the trustees of the Art Gallery of New South Wales. And that was essential.
Oh my God, what a phenomenal.
Where does this portrait hang?
Well, it's actually in my home.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but it was on display for a period of time. And
It toured Australia for about a year.
Oh.
Yeah.
I think we need to bring that out.
I think you can find a copy of it online.
Yeah.
We'll put it in the show note if you don't mind.
That
Absolutely.
sounds beautiful.
It is.
How
It's a beautiful
cool.
portrait. It's a beautiful portrait.
Thanks again for joining us, and thanks for listening to Top Med Talk.
Thank you very
Great
much.
day. Cheers.
Top Med Talk.
Hi, it's Desiree Chappell here. Top Med Talk is the broadcasting arm of EBPOM, Evidence-Based Perioperative Medicine. Most of our podcasts from Top Med Talk are either presentations from the EBPOM conference or they're interviews with people who attend the EBPOM conferences. Have you always wanted to attend an EBPOM conference, but you are unsure because of travel, accommodation, costs, whatever it may be? This year, are you planning to respect social distancing and avoid attending large social gatherings while minimizing travel? Do you want to attend one of the most important medical conferences of the year without having to leave your home? Go now to ebpom.org and discover EBPOM Live from London. Get all the latest and greatest information streamed live to your home, office, or bedroom as you attend the conference virtually. Submit your questions, network, and hear these talks before anyone else in the world. In light of the recent COVID-19 pandemic, attendance for this conference is at an all-time high. We only have some limited spaces available. Carbon-friendly conferencing is here. Be part of the most exciting development in medicine since the invention of the stethoscope. ebpom.org.